Hi, this is Trev and welcome to my blog. Welcome to part 13 of my Bedford CA van restoration. This is the first of the updates. I've scrapped doing themed parts now because I've got through most of the big modifications. It's what most people want. Most people want faster updates. They don't want to wait 5 months for the next one. It's easier for me as well because I can just shoot off a load of footage of what I'm doing and then turn it into another part. It's going to be more random, but there won't be any issue with the length of the parts because I scrapped most of the footage anyway. When I did the bodywork one, I actually scrapped about an hour and a half of footage to make it watchable. Massive thanks to all the emails and comments I've been receiving since my last part. Most notably one called Wilf Van Hees. Now, Wilf is a Canadian hot rodder and he got his CA a few months ago and he's hot rodding it and he's putting a 4.8 litre General Motors power plant into it. He's quite a funny chap actually. He writes to me and he'll say something like, I've just got the body shell shot blasted and next week I'm intending on starting the chassis, and then I'll receive an email about 3 weeks after this and he'll say, I finally got the chassis built. This amazing engineered chassis, beautifully painted and built with this big V8 on it and everything else. And well, if you blow me out the water, my friend, what we should do is we should scrap this van and do a blog on your van. It's far more interesting. Also, massive thanks to Andrew Thomas. You're a great friend. Thank you very much. Andrew's got this precognition thing going on where I'm sort of working on the van. I'm always trying to think ahead. He's preempted it already. He's already given me solutions to the problems I'm going to have in the future. So thank you very much, Andrew. You're massive help. Thank you, my friend. I've also tried to help a few people out lately with their problems. I don't claim to be a Bedford expert. This is the first CA I've ever worked on after all, possibly the last. Keep those emails coming. I appreciate it. I enjoy it. Thank you very much. Also received a bit of an odd email off a chap called Ed. Definitely not worth mentioning, but I mention it anyway. Ed writes, Trev, thanks very much for your videos, but there doesn't seem to be any content for my pet hamster. What? Well, I'm sorry, Ed, but I don't know how to make programs for hamsters. I'm having a few issues with my side door safety catch. When it opens into this hook that's welded onto there. It opens with such a jolt that it's actually bending the safety catch itself. So what I've done is I've modified and fabricated up this sprung hook. It's actually made out of another bonnet safety catch. So when it opens onto this spring. I've mounted a large compression spring behind this as well. And it's really tough for me to pull back by hand. But what it does is it slows down the opening of the side door and it should prevent the bonnet safety catch from bending any further. Next job I need to do is fit a check strap on this door. For obvious reasons, the wind will catch it, it'll go flying backwards and buckle the door into the quarter panel. But the main reason is because it's actually tilted backwards, the door, so it's trying to shut itself all of the time, which isn't going to make for getting in and out of the vehicle very nice with a door that's constantly trying to shut on you, like this. So that's my next job. I've sourced this check strap, which I think will do the job, from my local breakers yard. I think it's off a Honda CR-V, but I couldn't swear to it. I need to actually fit it now to this door, which is going to create some problems, I'm sure. Now, a nice obvious place for this to go would be quite high up where the post narrows. This is because it would be able to be mounted here and attached to the door nicely. The problem with this is the hooked part of the check strap will then stick out into the passenger area, and I can just imagine how chuffed my wife will be if she sat in the passenger seat with a nice dress on and has to get up against an oily check strap. Yes. So I think I'm going to have to mount it lower down, which would be an obvious place because it'd be low down and it'd be out of the way. The problem is it's wider here, and as it tries to close, the hooks part will probably try and dig into this reinforcement that I don't want to corrupt. I don't want to start cutting this away. So this is my next challenge. So this is the check strap fitted for the first time. It's just roughly tacked into place. It works, however, there is a problem. It's far too strong for this light door. It must have came off a very, very heavy door, and the problem I've got is it's so powerful. This mounting plate is actually flexing the post and the door when I open and close it. I'm not actually going to show you what it's doing because I don't want to do any damage to the door, but it kind of works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this apart and see if I can weaken it. Not sure whether I'm going to do this or not, but I've got no other choice, so let's see what happens. I'm going to take the check strap apart and see if I can relieve some of the tension inside. It seems to be held together with these tabs, so I'm going to straighten these tabs out. Hopefully this plate will come up. What I'm expecting to see, but not 100% sure on this, is a couple of sprung loaded wheels. Don't know what I'm going to find yet, let's see. And there we have it, 2 large springs with rollers as expected. I'm a bit reluctant to take it apart, but I'm going to have to do something because it's no good as it is. So I'm kind of thinking about getting the springs out, squashing them up in the vise slightly, and then warming them with oxygen acetylene torch just to take some of the tension out of one of the coils on each spring. My big worry is getting it apart, getting it back together again afterwards because it's under such tension, but these are large springs. I can see why it's so stiff to open and shut. Now, I'm going to scratch the oxygen acetylene idea. Now I've got the unit apart and had a good look at the springs. They're flat ground on the end, and I think that I could grind some off if over tensioning them in the vise first doesn't make any difference. What I'm going to do is compress them right up so they can't go any more, put a bit of tension on them. Because they're such thick, short springs, this may make a difference because they're not actually moving very much. The shaft that they run along is only 8mm tall, so they only move 4mm each, which isn't a great deal. So if I overload them in the vise, this could actually make a bit of a difference. So I'll do that first. If it doesn't make much of a difference, then I'm going to just grind some off the end because I want to get both springs exactly the same. Otherwise the rollers won't run in the centre of the unit anymore, which is going to create other problems. So let's see what happens. I've lost 2mm off the spring. Don't know whether this is enough. Like I said, the shaft's 8mm tall. I know that's 4mm in total, but the unit operates under tension already, so the spring is already under tension when it's free rollering. So whether this 2mm actually makes a difference or not, I don't know. The annoying thing is now I'm going to have to reassemble the whole thing to see if it's made any difference. Try it. If it hasn't, then take it all back apart again and grind some off the ends perhaps next if that doesn't work. So here we are. It's fine now. Just taking that bit off those springs has worked a treat. Of course, fussy old me, I'm actually beginning to wonder whether I've weakened them too much because it does seem to open and shut rather too well. I'll just give you a quick demonstration. No effort at all now to open and close the door, and nothing's flexing horribly either. The other thing I've had to do is the hooked rod that comes out this side did indeed bury itself into the post. So I've had to planish this area out here to allow for the post to come round. Fortunately, it's quite a weak spot because it comes out, sticks out past the internal panel, so this is kind of hanging free really. So I've just been able to tap this in. Yeah, okay, smacked in with a great big hammer, but it's worked well. Happy days. And the door now stays out on its own. What I intend to do once I've got this all welded in properly is actually box this in. So I'm going to make a box around this. It will make it look neater, and also this greasy part won't be sticking out so that you can catch your clothes on it. So the door now has a check strap fitted that has a 2-position opening as well. So there's the first position. If you just want the door open slightly and have it stay open and locked out in its widest open position, which is more than enough space to allow passengers to get in and out of the vehicle, and the door isn't so far open that you can't reach the handle to close the door again. That seems pretty stable. That should work well. The next thing I've had to sort out is working out a way of sealing up the front opening door. At the rear of the door is not an issue because the door actually overlaps at the rear. There's a fairly even gap, and I can just use a self-adhesive trim that will sandwich between the door and the van. Not a problem. The problem arises at the front of the van, where there is no overlap, and it's going to be impossible to put a self-adhesive trim that goes up inside this channel. With the door coming in at the side, it's just going to end up eventually swiping the trim off. It probably won't seal anyway, and I have horrendous wind noise. So what I've done is I've made up this plate to go along here, and it sticks out a good 20mm, which is more than enough to mount a self-adhesive trim. It stands about 18mm tall and will squash down to about 5mm, so I think it will do the job nicely. It goes all the way down, and it goes around to meet up with my Corsa B plate there, so it will seal all the way around the outside. Again, it'll go all the way down here. This disappears in this part, so I've made up this plate. I'm going to bond in there. I'm not going to weld it because I don't want to destroy all the nice epoxy coating on the inside. So I'm going to epoxy this, and then I will then bond it with some polyurethane adhesive into there. This will stop all the nice coating from burning off the inside if I was to weld it. This ought to be a pretty good bond. It's got a big surface area. It won't be under too much pressure, so it's not going to go anywhere. Interesting little story with this. Chuffed to bits really. This top rail here, the top rail, the screen top rail, I was aware that there was a lot of old receipts and bits of old junk paperwork that had been stuffed behind this rail from years and years ago. Because I was welding in this area, I thought, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to be welding away, and I'm going to end up with a fire in the roof. So what I've done is I've taken a long time to get it all out, but I managed to get some welding wire actually down inside. Made a little hookup, was just hooking all these old receipts out. And in amongst these receipts, I mean, it's just the old receipts in themselves, quite interesting. You know, the date's 1965. The old pound, shilling and pence written down, bits and pieces. Tons of old receipts that I'm just going to have to toss really. But in amongst it all, like I say, some business cards. Best of all is this business card that actually belonged to the owner of the van. So I now find out that he did plumbing and roof work. Right, such an old card. No telephone number on there. No email address anyway. It's just you know, the name and his address, and that's it. So no real way of getting hold of him unless you went round to his house and banged on the door. But this is the real gem. I've saved it till last. I've found the original tax disc, which would have been taken out of the van. It expired in December 31st, 1960. I could imagine, I mean, it only had one owner before until I bought it off the guy I bought it from, off the original owner. So really it's only had me and the original owner own it, just a middleman really. So I can just imagine him taking this tax disc out of the window. First ever tax disc. I won't throw this away. I'll tuck it up inside the van and I'll keep it. I'm really pleased he did, because of course this can now go back in the windscreen when the restoration's completed. Be a nice little touch. Of course, I've always had this model on the sideboard for about 10 years. I've always wanted one, but I couldn't justify spending £10 million on a whim. My wife could never decide what to buy me for my birthday, and it was my birthday last week, and she said, your present's in the garage. My very own Ferrari 250 Le Mans. Which was nice. If you have been following my blog right from the start, this will look a familiar sight. We're back inside the cab. I had intended to do something else, but I can't get the parts. So I'm looking at addressing this floor situation and maybe boxing the engine in. I'll get as much done as I can anyway before I go off and do something different. I originally removed this part of the floor section. I planned to put some of it back in, greatly reduced in size. I'm going to box in around the engine and put the original oven door back on. I've already reduced the size of the floor well by about 20mm on the driver's side, and removed the clutch pedal top and moved it over slightly to compensate for this. Seems quite comfortable, still able to use all the pedals, not a problem. I've got other plans. I won't discuss them too much at this stage because you're going to see it as it goes along anyway. But I need to create space where there isn't any, and I need to make some access holes. I also plan to box in behind the dash. It won't be open to the engine as it would have been originally. There's no need for this, I don't believe anyway, and it'll work far better. I plan to put a different heating system in as well with a blower, kind of like a racing car heater. That's the plan. I haven't got that, so this could change at any time. It's going to evolve as it goes along, as they say. This is a shot of the inner wing. We've got the old air trap box that goes up inside. That's what you're looking at now. One of the issues I've got with clearance around this area is access to the dipstick is virtually impossible to get it in and out because it crashes into this lot. So with the heater flap box removed, it's given me a lot more space, a lot more distance now between the engine and this inner flitch panel. I also needed to move this over to give me some more space around because I'm going to have to build a new removable inner panel that's going to go on the inside like it would have been originally, so I can remove that panel to get manifold without having to take the engine out. I've just started making the gearbox tunnel, so I've made the brace up that will brace the two floor front rails together, so it's braced there and there. This is now held together, so it ties that nicely together to stop any movement between the two rails. It'll also support the oven door, which is going to cover the back of the engine. I had to start here, I had to start somewhere, and I thought this was a good place to start. So I've chosen where I want the oven door to go and made the box around this area. It's all parallel, dead parallel, but it looks odd because the chassis is not parallel, so it looks like it's at a funny angle at the moment. I was going to build up the entire floor section up to this back rail as suggested by somebody, but I think theirs is a camper, and I think their camper doors are a lot taller than my van. I could be wrong there, but I don't want to restrict the space I've got to get in and out of the van anymore, because it does seem quite shallow to me. So I've purposely left this step back in. I'm going to make some new floor panels up, put some strengthening in there and try and keep it as tidy as possible. So the next job will probably be to get that oven door mounted. If I can mount the oven door to that rail, and then I'll just get that so it's fitted in there. I'm going to have to cut some off the bottom of that as well, which is going to be a bit of a nightmare. But once I can get that hinged on that rail, I can build everything off it. But this was a good place to start, I thought. The immediate and most obvious problem I've got with fitting this door is the fact that the coil pack sticks out a bit far. I've toyed with the idea of actually lengthening the door, shortening the door, and all sorts of things. Moving the coil pack, I could move the coil pack somewhere else. I don't really want to do that. I haven't got a lot of space to play with, and it is really in the ideal spot. And the thermostat housing sticks out anyway. We're not talking much more, so I think I'm going to have a go at shifting the door further back rather than going all around the houses with lots of other modifications. I'm trying to simplify things here a little bit, not modify absolutely everything I do. So I think moving the door further back into the van between the passenger and the driver won't really cause a huge obstruction. So that's probably the way I'm going to go. I've pretty much finished boxing in this side now. All the panels are made and welded in, finished off. The shaped piece in here goes around the downpipe to get the panel as far away from the downpipe as possible, and there is a really reasonable gap there now. Next thing I've got to do is I've got to make up a new floor section for this passenger side floor well. I folded up a new piece of steel for it over here. So this is my new piece of steel. I've put a couple of pressed a couple of swages in it as well, and I've made up this new piece of box support to be welded in underneath. So that's going to be my next job. I've also made up a gearbox tunnel panel, which is over there. Just roughly pressed out for now, just folded up. I've got to make all these panels fit, of course, now. I've dug the old driver's side floor panel out. Bit of a blast from the past. I remember this featuring in one of my previous videos with me removing it. I think it was when I was trying to get the engine in or something. So, essentially, it's pretty solid. Somebody's butchered it here when they were trying to get the original engine and gearbox out, or whatever was going on. I mean, there was all sorts of bits stripped off the original engine. There was only half of it in there. Also got some corrosion in this front corner, which is pretty typical of the Bedford CA to go in this front corner. Apart from that, I'm pretty loath to make a completely new piece of floor section. It's got its original features still, the pressings and everything else, which is going to be hard to replicate to make it look, you know, kind of original. I know it's not original anymore, but it'd just be nice to retain the original floor as much as I could, having had to replace the passenger side. I've just scraped the underseal off the underside. Yeah, it's not too bad, is it? The underseal came off quite nicely, not like a modern rubberized coating, which would have been all day trying to get it off. So it's scraped off quite nice with an old wood chisel. I mean, some parts of it are untouched. This is the split I've got to do. It's rather stretched in this area, so what I've done is I've cut it out with a slit-in disc. I've cut that out, and then I've flattened the panel out as best as I could, leaving this little gap. When I weld that, it'll pull it in, which will get rid of some of the stretching that's happened to it, unfortunately. So I got the corrosion on this damaged piece welded up now. Quite pleased with the way it's turned out. Kept distortion to a minimum. Little tip here if you're ever welding anything up. If you just got to let a piece of metal in on the edge of something, if you can, always make sure that the piece you're welding in is a little bit bigger, possibly with a right angle like this one's got. This is just an offcut I've used that I was using for something else. This is 18 gauge steel, so it's a bit thicker than ordinary car body steel, but the floor is a lot thicker, so it's a nice sort of size to use to repair this floor. Yeah, I'm quite happy with how that's come out, and because I've left it bigger, it tends to hold the shape of the panel to how the shape it's supposed to be, rather than if I just let a piece in exactly the right size, there's a chance that I'd have ended up with a frilly edge, and nobody wants a frilly edge, do they? So now that this is welded in, ground off, minimum of heat distortion, I can now cut it off so that it'll be a nice crisp edge along there without it being stretched to hell. I've just spot welded a nice angle section to the driver's side floor section. This will lip underneath the gearbox tunnel and be bolted through to make a nice joint between the two panels to stop any flexing. Next, what I intended to do is to fill this gap in that looks absolutely horrendous now. So I'm going to cut the lip off the inner floor section of the driver's side to retain this lip and reuse it again over here, and then build a nice curved section between the oven door and the floor section. Make it curved, don't want any angles really involved if I can help it, to try and tie it in nicely with the van so it doesn't look too out of place. I've just removed this piece from the driver's side floor well. This is the lip that fits up underneath the engine cover or the oven door. I'm just mounting some other little panels to it now. That's going to mount to the gearbox tunnel, that flat plate on there, that'll mount to the gearbox tunnel. I've just made up a little right angled section I'm going to weld in underneath there to give it a lip, and that lip then will fix to my piece I've got to fabricate to fill in that hole. Here's a comparison shot of my passenger side front floor well to the floor well of another Bedford CA that is completely standard. This van belongs to John Granger, and this was the same van that was used in the Antiques road trip shown just the other week, just to show you the comparison between the two. I don't think it'll look too out of place, mine, once it's all painted the same colour. I think the modifications that I've made should blend quite nicely. So I've got my blanking panel made up now. It wasn't the easiest thing I've ever made, to be quite honest with you. At the top, it's quite flat at the top, and at the bottom it's very much curved. Got a very strong radius at the bottom. At the top it's very much flat. The distance at the top of the panel from there to there is 18 centimeters, and at the bottom it's 25. The added complication as well is that this floor section is closer to the engine cover this side, and then at the bottom it's a lot further away. Same as at the bottom. That gap there is actually slightly tighter than that one, but not in equal amounts. So it's been quite a difficult thing to manufacture. But what I will say, some people might find this interesting, no specialist equipment was used to make this panel. Although it's quite a complex shape, the initial curve I created by bending it around the flue pipe of my stove. And then it was just a case of manipulating it into shape. You can just see some black overspray here. And what I did, this is going to sound a bit mad, but what I did is this is dead flat. If I held something flat up underneath this, that sits dead flat, and it's a very, very curved line when you look at it from one direction. So it's extremely curved from one direction and very flat in the other. This is an incredibly hard kind of cut to make accurately when you're guessing it, and you'll end up in all sorts of pickles. Now what I've done is I've actually lowered the panel into water and tipped the panel at the angle it is in the van. So I've measured the angle, I've put it into a bucket of water, and I've tipped it to the angle it is in the van without getting water all over the panel. And then what I've done is I've marked it each side, so I knew how deep to lower it into the water. I've then got an aerosol can, sprayed it along the water line and pulled it out. Then when the paint's dried, I've got a nice line all the way round which is dead flat, which I've cut it off to, which gives me that nice finish, so that when I've made this blanking panel here, it will finish nice and straight. It won't look odd, it won't look like it's curving down or anything stupid. It'll just be a nice, clean, level cut. And then I'm going to bolt it around there once I finish this section off. And that's what I've got to do next. This will essentially draw close to the modifications I've had to make around this engine cover, but that's going to have to wait till next time because I'm out of time now. Thanks for watching part 13, catch you in part 14 where I'll be finishing the floor off. I've also had a big slab of stainless steel arrive for my catering equipment to stand on, so I really need to get that sorted out. Bit boring for most folks, I know, but this is the random clips nature of things now, so it's going to be more lunacy and random clips in part 14. Catch you then. Bye for now. Chickens.